Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, and I'm honored to stand here today alongside many of the state's leading advocates and activists dedicated to protecting the rights of immigrant New Yorkers and some of my representatives, some of my finest colleagues in government. I'm joined, among others, by Commissioner Nisha Agarwal of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, Commissioner Lorelei Salas of the city's Department of Consumer Affairs, Mario Russell from Catholic Charities, Angela Fernandez from the Northern Manhattan Coalition for Immigrants' Rights, Barbara Graves-Polar of the Legal Aid Society, Theo Oshiro of Make the Road New York, and Stephen Choi of the New York Immigration Coalition. I'm also extremely pleased to be joined by representatives from my colleagues in several critically important district attorneys' offices, Mayor Ling Rivera from the Manhattan DA's office, Ken from the Brooklyn DA's office, Carmencita Gutierrez from the Queens DA's office, and Miriam Bell Blair from the Bronx DA's office. I note that the 5 New York City district attorneys issued a very strong statement on the issue of hate crimes last week and are working with us also on the issue of protecting vulnerable immigrants in a time that is perceived by many to be a time of crisis. I'm also joined by representatives of my own office, Lourdes Rosado, the chief of my Civil Rights Bureau, and Roberto Lebron, the head of our Harlem regional office. So it's not a secret, ladies and gentlemen, and in the last few weeks we've seen intense fear in immigrant communities all over America, including the incredibly vibrant and diverse immigrant community here in New York City. The fear relates to how the incoming presidential administration will affect their lives, their livelihoods, and their families. As I said here last week, when I stood here with some of the same colleagues to denounce the rise in hate crimes across our state and all of America, really, there is a robust infrastructure of government and nonprofit agencies in place in New York to help anyone who is scared and anyone who is threatened. People are understandably frightened, and frightened, desperate people are the number one target of scammers. So today we are here to call attention to the fact that in recent days my office and many of the service providers that work with our immigrant communities have seen a significant rise in the number of immigrants looking for help. For example, Angela's reports that the Northern Manhattan Coalition for Immigrants' Rights has seen its volume of calls and walk-ins rise by more than 250% since Election Day. Many of those seeking help are reporting they've been approached by fraudsters and scam artists preying on the desperation of immigrant communities. One of the most common scams we are seeing are immigrants being targeted by unsolicited calls from fraudsters pretending to actually be immigration officials. Often, these scammers threaten immigrants with deportation unless they make an immediate cash payment or turn over sensitive personal information. Just last week, an immigrant called our Buffalo office to say he had been targeted by this exact type of scam. He received a phone call from an official-looking 1-800 number, and the fraudster told the man that he had improperly filled out some immigration forms and needed to pay a $1,500 fine immediately. One of the most nefarious parts of this particular scam was that the 800 number that showed up on the immigrant's caller ID is the actual 800 number of an official U.S. government immigration office. So by using technological tricks, they're able to add additional indicia of legitimacy to these scams. There was no indication to the immigrant that the call was not legitimate, but he sensed something was wrong, hung up, and then called my office, but unfortunately not before turning over some important personal financial information. Please remember, and this is the most important message to get out, law enforcement agencies will never demand immediate payment over the phone or by email. They will never request personal financial information or threaten deportation over the phone or by email. If you get a call like this, hang it up immediately and report it to us. We have phone numbers over there on the far side of the room that to report scams to our office. And if you're in need of general immigration services and want to get referred to a legitimate agency in your community, you can call the hotline also. Other scammers pretend to be lawyers or certified notarios who charge excessive fees to help with routine immigration paperwork, often not delivering anything at all. Some scammers also say they know an immigration office or individuals in immigration offices that can help expedite paperwork, all for an exorbitant fee. And needless to say, most of them don't know anyone who can help with anything. It's just a scam. And sadly, and this is true in all areas of identity fraud, we see scammers targeting immigrants in their own communities from their own countries and using their shared connections to make victims feel comfortable so they can con them out of money. There are a few simple steps you can take to protect yourself from scammers. First, only work with a licensed lawyer and authorized service provider. Again, you can get a referral to a legitimate provider at the state immigration hotline, which I think is being run by Catholic Charities, and hopefully we'll hear more about that later, at 800-566-7636, 800-566-7636. Second, never sign blank applications or documents you don't understand. It's tremendously important. The network of service providers is energized. Our office is energized. The new state hotline is up and running effectively. There are people you can talk to make sure to give you real help, but don't sign blank applications or documents you don't understand. Never make payments over the phone or by email. And if you think you've been targeted by a scam artist, call my immigration hotline immediately at 866-390-2992. While these times are scary, I want to assure all the immigrants in New York that my office is here to protect you. When you call our office, we never ask about immigration status. Our job is to protect all vulnerable New Yorkers, period. And there are countless nonprofits and other state and local agencies across New York that have committed to protecting you too. We are standing together on this in the state of New York. I told you earlier that the number of calls and visits to immigration groups has soared in the past 2 weeks, and I'd say that that's actually a good thing, because people who are calling or visiting are doing exactly what they should do, getting help from groups with a long history of good work in our immigrant communities. So while the challenge ahead of us is significant, New Yorkers have already been through a lot together, and it's no coincidence that many of our nation's great movements were born here. And it's important for all New Yorkers to remember that generations past of New Yorkers have fought against odds much more overwhelming than those we face today and accomplished great things. This is the home of Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass. This is the home of Stonewall. This is the place where the Statue of Liberty guards our harbor with a welcoming message to all immigrants. It is up to all of us to amplify and rebroadcast her message every day that people are living in fear. Do what you can to protect yourselves, and know that there are many, many people and agencies here to support you. And now I'll say a few words in Spanish. Yo quiero decirle a todos los inmigrantes que estamos aquí para protegerlos. Vamos a someter a todos aquellos que abusan o estafan a los inmigrantes. And with that, I thank you for joining us here today, and I now want to introduce a great ally in this fight, Commissioner Nisha Agarwal of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Schneiderman, for both staying vigilant in protecting the immigrant community and for your leadership in this area. And thank you so much to the community and other partners who are here as well with us. I am here today to reiterate the Mayor's message of supporting our immigrant communities and standing by each and every one of them. This administration will continue to fight for the rights of all of our people, regardless of immigration status. And New York will continue to provide an example to the rest of the country. We urge everyone in New York who may be concerned to educate themselves about the resources that are available to them. Immigration services fraud is a serious issue that can result in a loss to a victim of thousands of dollars and may potentially even put an individual's immigration status at risk. At the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, we've been doing a number of different things to combat immigration fraud. First, we've been working with partners in the community to raise awareness about this issue. We've worked closely with the Office of the Attorney General and the Department of Consumer Affairs in partnership with the Hispanic Federation and Telemundo to do a telethon to raise awareness about immigration services fraud and the resources that are available. During that telethon, we received more than 900 calls over the course of 3 days. We were able to refer almost 300 individuals to file complaints and referred 542 individuals to safe providers. We've also done ethnic media and other briefings to share information about this problem and the resources that are available. In addition, we've created simple, easy ways to file complaints. The New York Police Department has been trained, the police officers have been trained on immigration fraud and how to recognize crime when it occurs. And they all have now an operations order that directs officers to provide information to fraud victims about how to file a complaint and how to accept police complaints if necessary. Trainings for the Community Affairs Bureau on common scams and how to help victims have been commonplace in our work with the police department. And finally, one of the ways to avoid fraud is to provide the resources to safe, accessible legal services. And the city and the state provide programs like Action NYC and New York Citizenship for safe, affordable legal services. There may be a lot of confusion about what immigration benefits are available or not. We're doing a lot of work to educate the community on this and encourage people to step forward for more information. We're very much looking forward to working with the Office of the Attorney General and our community partners in the room on this work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we're going to hear from another great ally, Commissioner Lorelei Salas of the city's Department of Consumer Affairs.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Attorney General Schneiderman. And thank you to all the partners who are here today to speak about these issues that are so much importance to our community. I think that we hear about the spike in calls. It's alarming, but at the same time, it's reassuring that those calls are coming to these groups that the community should be trusting with this information. I myself arrived here at the age of 19 with my family, so I'm deeply familiar with the challenges new people coming to this country face. And at the Department of Consumer Affairs, we're deeply committed to working on these issues with our partners in the room. Our mission is to protect and enhance the daily economic lives of New Yorkers to create thriving communities. And protecting and serving immigrants, regardless of immigration status, is a priority for the agency and for the city administration. I want to stress, of course, as Commissioner Agarwal already mentioned, that the city does not ask for immigration status and that we speak your language. At DCA, we have materials translated in more than 26 languages. Whether you have a complaint about paid sick leave, about an employment agency, or an immigration service provider, we at DCA want to hear from you. So if you find yourself or your friend or a relative in need of immigration assistance, do not believe in false promises of work authorization, green cards, or citizenship. Do not hand over your hard-earned money to unqualified providers. Immigration service providers cannot tell you what forms to use, to file. They cannot give you legal advice, and they cannot explain your immigration options or discuss your citizenship case. Also, unlike in other Latin American countries, notarios públicos in the United States are very limited in what they can do. They can attest to your identity, and they can notarize documents. We urge anyone who has dealt with an immigration service provider who has committed who has engaged in illegal activities to please call us, contact DCA, call 311. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to hear from an organization that has been an incredible partner of ours in many, many important efforts, not the least of which protection of the rights of immigrants. Mario Russell, the Director of Immigrant and Refugee Services at Catholic Charities.
Thank you, Attorney General. Over the past 2 weeks, the fear, anxiety, and uncertainty among immigrant communities has deepened and I think intensified in a way that we've not seen for well over a generation or more. So today, I express on behalf of the Archdiocese of New York and Catholic Charities that we stand with families, children, and workers who've come to America to build their dreams and to build their communities and to build this country. And what they do today, really, is what we and they have always done for 400 years. And so in particular now, Catholic Charities stands with Attorney General of New York in his important work to protect and safeguard the rights of this state's newcomers and ensure that they're treated with dignity and with respect. Catholic Charities work to fight against fraud against immigrants through its New York State New Americans hotline, 1-800-566-7636, is as essential to its mission as is its own commitment to provide competent legal services to almost 10,000 individuals a year. We cooperate with state and city authorities, and the New Americans Hotline has a task of registering and forwarding to prosecutors complaints of fraud against fake legal providers, against predatory schemers, and against grossly incompetent representatives. Our counselors and our attorneys hear each caller's story over the phone and draft a report for submission. Since July 2014, we have taken and registered hundreds of those kinds of complaints and forwarded them to the authorities. In May of this year, we held a telethon which also yielded hundreds of registered complaints. But we've all heard those stories of schemers. They are familiar and they're painful, and they're a reminder that immigrants sometimes are really most vulnerable in their own communities. I just want to take an example of a case that was in fact reported. Carmen, of course this is anonymous, who lives in Queens and sought help from Sonia, who owned an, quote, income tax agency that specialized in immigration matters, as per her advertisement. Sonia promised that she would get permanent legal status for Carmen's son, and for Carmen's husband. All three were undocumented and ineligible at that time for any benefits. But Sonia promised that she knew the way. So Carmen paid her $3,000 in cash, and you can imagine the end of that story. Nothing was filed. But that was really just the beginning, because a few weeks later, Carmen's son was detained in an immigration workplace raid, and bond, in his case, was set at $10,000. Sonia stepped in again, promising a solution that she only knew how to get to. And so for $6,000, she said she could get the boy out and avoid the $10,000 bond amount. And you know how this ends as well. The son was not released, and Sonia, like the $3,000 and the $6,000, disappeared. These stories are painful and hard reminder of the important task of lifting and protecting the most vulnerable among us. This is our task, which we continue to do one person at a time, affirming the dignity of each as we build a just and compassionate society. And so we're confident that in joining our work with the efforts and the vigilance and the support of Attorney General Schneiderman, immigrants will find the care and the protection that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now another longtime ally and colleague in the struggles, Angela Fernandez, the Executive Director for the Northern Manhattan Coalition for Immigrants' Rights.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Angela Fernandez, and I'm the Executive Director of Northern Manhattan Coalition for Immigrant Rights. We have seen a tremendous uptick in calls, walk-ins, emails from immigrants that are very, very frightened. We have also heard reports of individuals who are receiving phone calls, just as the Attorney General had mentioned, from so-called immigration officials telling these individuals to call another number and hand over their bank account information and pay a fee so they don't get deported. Fortunately, these people have reported it to us knowing that they were scams, but we're very concerned that there are other people that are hoping that this is an avenue for their help. So we're very, very grateful that the Attorney General, who's been a long-time ally to immigrants, is taking the lead and stepping up and offering all sorts of information on where immigrants can seek protection. I would also like to stress that there is a large network of community-based organizations that are here for immigrants, that provide services for free and for low cost. And please, what I urge that you communicate this to the immigrant community. They can call the phone numbers that have been mentioned before, and can also call 311, say what zip code they live in, and then they can get a trusted community-based organization to seek help. Ahora lo digo en español. Soy Ángela Fernández, soy la directora de la Coalición de los Derechos de los Inmigrantes. Nosotros hemos recibido muchísimas llamadas, muchísimas personas entrando en nuestra oficina consiguiendo ayuda. También hay personas que han recibido llamadas de gente que dicen que son inmigración, que le están diciendo a personas que llamen un número, que den su información de banco para pagar, para que se le previene una deportación. Tienen que tener mucho cuidado, que ahora en esta época de incertidumbre van a llegar muchas llamadas de ese tipo. También queremos dar la gracia al fiscal general, que siempre ha sido un aliado, siempre ha sido un líder en proteger a los inmigrantes, y que ha compartido ya unos números de teléfonos que si una persona necesita ayuda legal ilegal, pueden llamar y pueden conseguir una organización que ofrece estos servicios gratis y a bajo costo. Con eso, le ruego, por favor, que las personas llamen, por ejemplo, al 311 para conseguir una organización que le puede ofrecer estos servicios gratis o a bajo costo. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Manny Castro, the Executive Director of New Immigrant Community Empowerment.
Thank you, Attorney General. Hi, everyone. New Immigrant Community Empowerment works specifically with day laborers and low-wage workers across New York City, but specifically Queens, where our community center is located. As you can imagine, our community is very frightened and afraid about the current climate post-elections, and I want to thank the Attorney General for holding the press conference last week, because we've seen results. Our community has come in asking for support and asking questions about what they can do about the increased harassment at day labor corners in Queens. And so again, today we stand here to urge our community to come to community centers like NICE and others present here today and report these instances of harassment and report those people that are looking to take advantage of the fear and about the concerns that they have. For many years, NICE has been working on this specific issue. We published a report, Drinks and Schemes, a couple of years ago, profiling some of the most egregious immigration service providers that operate throughout New York City and in Queens specifically, looking to take advantage of immigrants' misunderstanding or folks who are seeking for advice and support, and they can only find it there. And so look for our report on our website, nynice.org. Our members conducted mystery shopping where they themselves identified instances of fraud and identified those actors that we then encouraged the authorities to go after. Ahora en español, trabajamos específicamente con jornaleros y jornaleras en las paradas en la ciudad de Nueva York, específicamente en Queens, y hemos visto un crecimiento en las instancias de crímenes de odio en las paradas, principalmente en Queens, y ya hemos visto resultados. Los jornaleros, los compañeros han venido a nuestras oficinas a reportar esas instancias y a reportar otros tipos de crímenes como de fraude. Este es un tema que hemos estado trabajando ya desde hace años y vamos a seguir trabajándolo con nuestros miembros. Insistimos que vengan a organizaciones comunitarias, como lo mencionó Ángela, y lo reporten. Y llamen al 311 y tengan seguridad que nosotros les vamos a apoyar. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. And finally, we're going to hear from Stephen Choi, the Executive Director of the New York Immigration Coalition.
Thank you, Attorney General. Good afternoon. So here's the truth. New York's immigrant communities are scared, and this fear is a very rational one. We are on the brink of a president-elect and administration that, as a candidate, ran the single most anti-immigrant campaign in the history of the United States. I need not go over all of his statements calling Mexicans rapists and criminals, calling for a ban on Muslim immigrants, but it's a very rational fear that New York's 4 million immigrant communities face. This is a fear that resonates really across the entire state, whether we are talking about Dominican communities in northern Manhattan, whether we're talking about Latino day laborers in Woodside and Jackson Heights, but even upstate as well. When you're talking about Haitian communities in Rochester, Yemeni communities in Buffalo, Salvadorian communities on Long Island. This is a fear that all of New York's immigrant communities face. And so, as the Attorney General said, it is in the midst of this fear, it is in this kind of atmosphere that the scammers and the fraudsters come to light. And they try to take advantage of this opportunity. And we have heard from so many of our 175 member agencies about all the scams and about all the frauds that are really coming to light. And so we, as the New York Immigration Coalition, we are very proud to stand alongside all of our amazing allies, the Attorney General, the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, the district attorneys, and of course our member agencies, to fight fraud where we find it. And we are very proud to be working with our Protecting Immigrant New York Task Force to pass a landmark law in 2014, cracking down on fraud And we have just introduced a city council bill to look to do the same on the city level as well. Lastly, I just want to say that it is absolutely important that we get the right information out there, that our communities know in all of the different languages, the 100+ languages that our communities speak. We need to make sure that all of those communities are educated about their rights. And we need to do everything that we can to reach out to as many of them as possible. So on behalf of the New York Immigration Coalition, I'm so proud to stand here, and we pledge to work together with the Attorney General and all of our partners to make sure that we are fighting back against fraud, and we are making sure that our communities have access to the remedies and the education that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. The last point is very important. If you call the state hotline, they will make help available to you in many different languages. It is something that we've taken great care to do. And it's very important to report even one scam, because if someone sends you one email or makes one phone call, that you may dismiss it and say, well, that was just a one-shot. That person may have called 20 other people. Report it to the authorities. Let us know. It enables us to do our work. Having immigrants not afraid to come out of the shadows and speak to the authorities is critical to the functioning of our city and our state and our nation. It is critical to all those of us in law enforcement who rely on victims and witnesses coming forward. This is a matter of public safety and national security, and it is something we are completely committed to. And with that, Amy Spitalnik will take questions. If you'll just identify where you're from and on topic.
Alex Silverman from WCBS Radio. You mentioned that in some cases these people are managing to display real government phone numbers on the caller ID. Is that something you've seen before, and is that in and of itself illegal?
Yes, it is something we have seen before. There are these techniques, spoofing and other techniques that have been used by scammers in the past. We have never seen a concentration of this sort of activity directed at immigrants before, but scammers prey on desperate people. And this is why, when in the wake of the collapse of the housing market, we had to set up a special AG Scam Help app to report scam from people who are purporting to help you pay off your mortgage. Right now, the targets are immigrants. We are uniting to protect them.
Hi, Beth Burdick, WNYC. Is there any way to quantify how much this has changed since the election? Because a lot of you were saying that this was already going on. So how can you do any numbers? Do you have any way to know?
I mean, the statistics are coming in fast and furious from all around the country. I think Angela mentioned a 250% increase in visits to her coalition. It's too early to really quantify the statistics because this is happening on a day-to-day basis, but there has been a massive spike in reports of both hate crimes and scams against immigrants. And it's important to note that we're here. Our first priority in this office is to deal with what's happening in the here and now, to protect people, to provide reassurance as we do research and anticipate things that may be coming. We don't know what's going to happen with this administration. One thing I can say, of having been in litigation with the president-elect for many years, is that this is a guy who 2 weeks ago said the Trump University case would be easy to win. He'd never pay $1. So the fact that he says he's going to do something doesn't necessarily mean he's going to do it. And there are steps we can take at the state and local level to pave the way and to make it clear that there are a lot of things that really are just not practicable or possible for the federal government to do, that require the help of local and state government. And in New York, we have a unified commitment to do everything in our power. But for the here and now, hate crimes, scams on immigrants, those are the immediate problems that are being faced, and that's what we're addressing.
Hi, Maria Alvarez, Newsday. Going back to that 800 number that looks official but is not, do you know the exact number, and does it say, does it have the name of a, I mean, what makes it look official?
Well, it looks official because it appeared to be a number that, if you looked it up, in fact was an office. I don't have the specific number. This is our Buffalo office of an immigration office there. So we've seen a lot of scams using improved technology. I have seen letterhead that looked exactly like the letterhead of my office that was being used in scams. So people have to be extra sensitive to this. You have to check with people who know. Call us, call the state hotline, call one of the groups that's here, call 311. It is a time for heightened awareness and heightened caution for the immigrant communities. But fortunately, in New York, where we have, I think, I will put the vibrancy of our immigrant community up against any place else in the world, and the pluralism of the community, we have a very strong infrastructures of agencies to help.
Hi, Laura Diamond, New York Daily News. On the topic of how technologically savvy some of these fraudsters have gotten, do you know of any cases yet that people have reported and there's been success in tracking some of these fraudsters down?
Yes, I mean we have had success on this. We have a long background on it. Again, we're dealing with a phenomenon that's very new in terms of the increase of the frauds. It's too early to say how the investigations will go, but when someone reports a fraudster to us, and it will not come as a surprise that there are very few fraudsters that only engage in fraud against one immigrant. If they've tried to defraud one, they've tried to defraud many, and the investigations are ongoing. But we have targets that we've been able to identify and locate, as have our colleagues in law enforcement.
You said that scammers usually use the community's culture as a way to, scam. Is that something that happens more often than not? Is it more common that the person is scamming a Latino is also Latino?
It's mixed, but it is particularly insidious because these scammers use their common bonds. We've seen scammers meet people at church and say, I'm a member of your church, and therefore that gives me a presumption of trustability. I mean, was the most famous scammer in recent memory, Bernie Madoff. Most of his victims were religious members of the Jewish community. So this is not something that is new or unusual. It's just particularly insidious and despicable.
Any other on this topic?
Yes, so you say you have some targets that you have identified. Are any of these targets that you've identified people that have been brought to the attention of this office, and in any of your investigations that have done this type of fraud in the past?
Yes, there are. I mean,
The same people?
there is this area of law enforcement and of law called identity fraud, where they pick a particular target group. There are people who specialize in scamming senior citizens. There are people who specialize in scamming
Sorry, that's not my
immigrants.
question was the people that you have not targeted of the victims, but the perpetrators.
No, I'm talking about the perpetrators. Yes. So this is very common. Identity fraud. You will find people who, if they are targeting immigrants now, there will be a small number of them who have never done it in the past. They probably have done it in the past, and those are the people who are the quickest to spring into action because they already have the infrastructure in place to do it. But it is something that we're pursuing aggressively. And again, as I say, we're trying to get ahead of the game, and being ahead of the game means we don't have a lot of statistics or specific cases for you right now. But the goal in the first case is to prevention. We'd rather come back to you in a month and say, we actually don't have that many successful frauds because we did head it off and people did call into the 800 number and did call 311 and did reach out to the immigrants' rights organizations.
Just to follow up, has anyone been arrested in the past few years for these types of scams targeting immigrants?
Oh, yes, and we've shut down major operations. IAF, I think, paid $2.2 million in restitution. We have been pursuing folks who have fled to other states and located them in other jurisdictions for defrauding immigrants. Yes, this is something our office has experience with, as do all of the folks standing here with me. Again, in New York, we have the advantage of having an incredibly robust, active immigrant community that is supported by the overwhelming majority of New Yorkers. We embrace our diversity, we embrace our communities, and we have experience with these kinds of scams, which enables us to move into action very quickly.
You started to answer it, but what are the fines or what happens when they're caught? You said they can pay restitution, and what else can happen?
They can be fined. They can pay restitution. In some cases, you can get jail time. It runs the gamut depending on the level of the fraud and the scope of the victims.
Off-topic question?
Trump University settlement. We know there was no admission of wrongdoing by Mr. Trump. Do you personally take this as an admission of wrongdoing by the president-elect?
Well, I'll let the documents that were submitted to the court speak for themselves. The documents submitted to the court showed Mr. Trump stating that and this is his line, my hand-picked experts will teach you my personal secrets, and will teach you, and in a weekend, what it took me a lifetime to learn. And then we know that he and the president of the university gave sworn testimony that he never had any participation in drafting the curriculum, so they weren't his personal secrets. He never even met the instructors, so they weren't his hand-picked experts, and that the instructors came from backgrounds including apparel sales and fast food, so they weren't experts at all. So yes, the payment was very significant. It also included a $1 million fine to the state of New York because they were holding themselves out as a New York university. And I think you can judge for yourself whether or not the size of the settlement and the swiftness with which they pursued it reflects a consciousness of guilt.
What about the size of the settlement? Several people are asking, is $25 million sufficient? Should you ask for more?
No, this was a really remarkable settlement if you look at the history of settlements of cases like this. And it happened in really in two different parts. There were consolidated class actions in California where the judge indicated, and this has been made public, that he was pressing for a settlement for both sides. Under the law in New York, you can't get a double recovery. If you sign on to accept a settlement in a class action in California, you can't come back and get a double settlement. From my case, anyone who was not covered by the California class action, we got full restitution, which is very unusual in a settlement, and a $1 million fine for the state of New York. Anything else?
How concerned are you about federal funding being cut because New York City's status as a sanctuary city?
Obviously, we take all of these problems and threats seriously. There is case law making it clear that there are limits to what the federal government can do to force local governments to comply. There's a case a few years ago in Oregon where a federal judge ordered an immigrant released because they were being held unreasonably for a period of time after they were detained by the local authorities. We do have in the Constitution a 10th Amendment that limits the power of the federal government to impose its will on states. And we're looking at this very practically. But I would say, as a law enforcement officer, that the notion that that driving immigrants back underground and ending a program like Sanctuary Cities is going to make us safer is absurd. It makes us all less safe. When people are hiding, they don't come forward to report crimes. They won't volunteer to be witnesses. The Sanctuary Cities program is important on a whole host of levels. It's important to the economy of a lot of cities. So we're prepared to make every moral, economic, and legal argument we can to protect our sanctuary city status, and we have substantial ammunition on our side in that fight.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.